However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight on Paranormal Now, guess what? It's already Halloween. So grab your freaky flint and creepy kindling and let's get to the fireside chat going. Starting us off in the first part of the hour is supposed to be Mike McCaskill. We think he's coming on soon. We'll let you know as soon as we get him hooked up. Mike is a ghost whisperer, and he's going to weaken your knees with his tale of high strange. Well, you'll hear. And also joining us for the full hour is KGRA host of Behind The Obsidian Curtain, Carole Carle, who will tell us about a subject she knows oh so well, the murderous case of the Fox sisters. And in the second hour, I'll be speaking with ufologist and practicing witch Cheryl Costa to tell us her understanding of how Halloween came to be and what it means to be a witch in these fast-moving modern times. So this is going to be a fun night. These are all paranormal regulars. I would say they're the Paranormal Now family regulars. Share your thoughts and experiences with us during or after the show on Facebook, facebook.com/paranormalnowradio, Instagram @paranormalnow, Twitter @paranormal_now, and of course, please join us in the KGRA chat room. Call-ins are now available to all of you as we rolled out our HD toll-free phone line, sponsored by the Paranormal Radio app. So add this number to your mobile phone so you can call us hands-free, 85-KGRA live. That's 855-472-5483. Listen for your cue to call in and pose your questions to the guest or myself. And make sure to save the new Paranormal Radio app hotline number, 85-KGRA-LIVE. And of course, if you can't get enough of your fix here on Paranormal Now, you can go to Paranormal Pop YouTube channel, where my sister program, Coffee and UFOs, exists in a parallel universe. It's video, not just audio. Crazy, right? And these are shorter chats as well. So you get to see me hanging with a lot of the regulars and friends that you've heard on this show before. Ghost whisperer and medium Mike McCaskill really takes us on a trip with his vivid descriptions of close-up encounters with entities. Their intentions are not always clear, which is scary. They have the upper hand. During his many ghostly interactions, Mike has experienced clairaudience, physical attacks, friendly exchanges, and a reportedly very powerful contact with an angel messenger from God. And I know that sounds a little out there, but if you're familiar with Mike, well, he's not out there. I can promise you that. He's been on the show a couple of times. He and I go way back to the old IRN days when we were with the Epic Voyages Radio. And Mike is about the real deal as you get. He doesn't have a website. He doesn't charge to do paranormal investigations. He just loves doing it. He loves going out to places when people need help. And when they call on him, Mike shows up and he does what he does. And he has been very, very successful and had some very strange experiences as well. So we will talk to Mike in just a moment. As soon as we get him on here in the line, and of course, we have Carole Carle, she is the host of, Behind the Obsidian Curtain here on KGRA. Yes, she's also a regular guest and pitch-hitting host on Paranormal Now. We also go back a number of years, and I really consider Carole a friend, and I have the utmost respect for her. So, Carole, I'm glad you're here with me tonight.
And checks in the mail, Alan. That was swell. No, really. Thank you. Listen, right back at you. We go back to, in fact, Epic Voyages on the aforementioned station. And I missed Mike somehow. I think, by the time I came on board as what was then known as a rotating host, and ghost host for tonight, shall we be that? He was gone, so I only knew his name. We didn't really interact. But yeah, and I didn't know know about the richness of his, most of the hosts had their own, besides day jobs or whatever, their own CVs and their own gigs independently. I did not know that his was dealing with spirits. That's a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
He did independent of Epic. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, Mike has had some phenomenal encounters. And I believe, Mike, you're here with us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Hey, welcome.
Hooray. There he is. Speak of him, and there he is. Okay, well, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, Mike, so you missed, I think, the intro I gave to you. I did mention that you are a ghost whisperer, for a better lack of any other term.
Interesting term. I like it.
Yeah, I think it applies to you because your communications with spirits or interactions, it's more than just catching something on a video, right? It's more than just saying, oh, I can feel something. And you've had some very intense experiences. And tonight, and you had mentioned to me that you have a really interesting Halloween story to tell, a tale, if you will. And for everyone listening, I have no idea what Mike is going to share with us tonight. So we're all just waiting here to hear what you have to say, Mike.
All right. Well, are you ready? Let's start with that.
Yeah, gather around the fire. Let's do it.
All right. I think it sounds like a good idea. Cozy.
So let me start off with a little preamble of sorts.
Sure.
This is a particular case that I had the opportunity to work with the team that I work with, that we have not spoken about too publicly as of yet. And then when you said you needed a good Halloween story, this particular case seemed to fit the bill because, unbeknownst to us, not planned this way, without any thought process at all, the case actually took place the night of October 31st. It was not on purpose. It was not our intention to do a Halloween deal. It was just the way the client schedule worked and just the way ours worked. It was a matter of fact, we were about 2 hours into the case of our investigation when we all just kind of had this epiphany of, what day is it? It's October 30th. What? That sort of thing. And so...
But did that give you some trepidation, knowing the date?
No. Halloween's never been a thing for me as far as any sort of lore as far as I'm concerned about it. There are a lot of things that talk about, that I've researched that talk about, the thinning of the veil on that night because it's, All Hallows Eve. Traditionally, in a lot of ancient holidays or what you call Old Souls or All Souls Day, I think takes place on the 1st or the 2nd of November, which that is supposed to be, and I don't know any fact to this. I'm not going to presume that I am the master of this knowledge, so to speak. I actually don't know a lot about it, but to say that those days or that day is the actual thinnest, where the dead can speak louder because they have some ability due to some cosmic reason. But with that said, this particular evening rung true. This is a case, and if I may, in my preamble, I want to leave the names of the clients out, if I may, and their location out, because one, I don't have their permission to do that. Two, this is kind of the way we work. The type of cases that we take are on a personal level. We go into people's homes, we hear their stories, and we try to diagnose their problem, whether it be a spiritual one or in some cases, maybe not. So with that said, I wouldn't want to have something so private that I did, it took a lot of courage to reach out to one of us, to step outside your comfort box and to call people in like us. But we generally end up with cases either that way directly or sometimes indirectly from other teams, to help solve something that's most of the time fairly bizarre. This particular night rang true of that. Now, with that said, a little backstory. This particular family, we had worked a case with them before, and we tend to find a solution to their problem, and they're happy. Everything's cool. In the past, they did have a spirit problem, and we did identify a spirit. We did cleanse the house and removed it from it, and then the family would be fine for a couple, sometimes 3 years, and we get a call again because they've they've moved to another location in another town somewhere else, and everything's fine. 6 months in of moving, 2 or 3 years after we've been there, some little things would start happening again. And it became sort of a feeling of the same sort of spirit. And the weirdness about this particular case is that it felt to me like the same spirit, and the spirit was negative in nature. And I never could really read enough of it with this ability that I have to really understand exactly what it was. But the cleansing worked, and it made the family happy. So it was kind of, don't dig any harder than I should. The diagnosis worked, the solution worked, and they're fine for years. And if they call again, then we'll reinvest into this. Well, and here we are. This was the third time over a course of 7 or 8 years that we visited this family. This particular time, they said that their norm of activity had advanced and had gotten a bit more negative and a bit more profound this time. And so...
What was going on, Mike?
Well, a array of things. As a husband and wife, the children weren't there that night. And then only when I came in, the children were almost never there, because we did ask them to remove the children in the home, because we don't try to expose small children to what we do. We don't think that's healthy for children's development.
I respect that.
So we tell them if there's children in the house, please remove them before we get there. I would prefer that the children never see me unless the parents insist. And then, of course, I don't want to tell anyone how to raise their child. But they had 2 or 3 children. And this particular night, they had 3, because 2 of them were there. This has been almost 4 years ago. 2 of them were there. One of them was staying with a family member. There talks of they just moved into this house. They've been doing fine since the last time we were there. They live in the same place. Everyone's happy. Nothing's going on. Little knick-knack things that you can just, coincidence, nothing profound enough to say, oh my gosh, that was a ghost.
But you wouldn't necessarily attribute it to a ghost. It's easy to kind of just turn a blind eye to it.
They didn't either. Yeah, just odd little things that you can't, for them, it wasn't enough to call us on,
Sure.
Because they couldn't say for sure that was something paranormal or something supernatural, whichever term we'd like to use. But this particular time they did, and they were hearing voices in the house. The wife tended to be the most inflicted as far as hearing voices, things touching her on the shoulder, grabbed her by the hand once, moved stuff around in the bathroom a few times, random poltergeist stuff. The wife was pretty upset about the touchy-feely things that hadn't really took place too much, but it was becoming more common, more of a daily occurrence at this point. So like, okay, we better get over there and look at this case again. And what we found interesting in the story is the recent move. Everything's been fine. The place that we'd done before, no problems. The husband had gotten a different job and required them to move off to a different town hours away. So they moved hours away. They move into this house, and boom, things start to go on. So on the phone, I didn't actually have the conversation on the phone. My teammates did. That had worked this case with us, said this seems like it's either the same thing doing something different, or it's something different entirely.
Wait, Mike, real quick, when they moved, was it solely because of the poltergeist or whatever it is?
No, they would move because of life. The husband worked a job that required him to travel, and he just seemed like I don't want to judge his life, and I don't want to do that at all. But it just felt like to me that he was the type of person that would work a job for a couple, 3 years and then move on to something else. It seems like that's how he wanted his life to be. Okay. Like he didn't have a career that he wanted to settle in.
So it wasn't an excuse to work somewhere else to get away from this thing.
No, okay. Not at all. That didn't seem to be the case at all. And so what we did find, though, is that every time they moved, something would go on. So we were starting to wonder what the consistency is with that. Mm-hmm. And we had a pre-thought process of they move, we run this thing out, we close their house off to it, it stays gone. They move somewhere else away from that protection that were created, and it comes back in. That's what we were thinking. that whatever this is has been with them a long time. We keep kicking it out, and then they move, and now their protections are gone away. You know, we have ceremonies in which we do that. We leave protection items. We close houses off from spirits, that sort of thing. We have a process for that. And when you move away from that, or you get away from that and leave it be, well, you're not in that, and I use this quotations, you're not in that safe anymore. And so you're like, okay, so we're going to have to revisit this case, probably do the same thing again. Mm-hmm. And then they'll probably be all right for a couple, 3 years. And, you know, we even kind of chuckled a little bit that this may be our lifelong non-paying customer every 2 or 3 years. You know, we may know these people 20 years. It may happen, you know.
But that's the thing. You guys do this out of the kindness of your heart, really, to help other people.
No, never charged a dime. Never have, never will. We have, in all honesty, we've had clients before offer us things, and we never turn down donations, but we never ask for them either. So with that said, this is not a career for us. This is not a paying job for us. This is a calling in life that we have. This particular thing that I've got, I feel was given to me for a reason, and I should give it away, so to speak, right? And you know, I didn't go to school. I didn't spend money. I didn't learn a trade. This was given to me by the powers that be. I don't feel right that way. And there are some out there that do it and they charge, and I have nothing against those either. You know, if that's what their calling is and that's what they need to do full time, okay. You know, if you're serving people and you're helping people and you need to make a living doing it, awesome. I got no issue with that. It's just me. I'm saying that for me from a personal level. This is how my soul feels about it, for me. With that said, back so I don't get too far away, so we do some scheduling back and forth, and this happens with this client every time. You know, they've got kids, they've got a life, and we've got our life, and sometimes we've got to make a date happen. Sure. And it's every time. So when they called this time, we're like, okay, let's find a date that works, and we have to work back and forth. So it was several weeks before we got there. So we get there, and we tell them we want to conduct an investigation. They told us about the time frames that this is the highest, which seemed to be from 9:00 p.m. to 1 or 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. It does happen all through the day, but that seemed to be, from their memory, the hottest time. So, okay, so we meet them over there. We talk to them. I'll walk in the house, and there's an immediate heavy presence in the house. And I walked in, and I felt it from the yard, and it got worse when I walked in the house. And I'm like, okay, whatever's here is engulfing this home. So what we want to do at this point is, and I tried to use this sensory ability that I have to zero in on it, and it kept darting around in rooms from me. And it's done this before. And I felt like it's probably the same thing, except for lack of better terms, it has more power this time, or it's more lively this time, or someone's fed it, so to speak. You know?
Fed it.
I don't know why.
What does fed it mean?
These things tend to operate, all spirits tend to operate off the energy, such as you and I we got to have a good breakfast in order to have enough energy for our day. That's our fuel. Their fuel is a random mixture of things depending on the type of spirit they seem to be. Some are high EMF locations. They draw their energy off the electromagnetic field inside a room. Get close to, fuse boxes at home and that sort of thing tend to be sometimes where the activity is higher because the energy is higher there. Some spirits, more often the more negative that they are and the more they want to focus on the person, well, then they use the person's energy to do it. And then they try to attach themselves, so to speak, to that person, follow that person around, because every human being that exists on this world, when you have an emotion, your body puts off a certain feel to it. Like, for example, you may or may not, but have you ever, I'll ask it in a question, have you ever walked into a room where two people are arguing, but you did not witness the argument? It was already done and they left the room, but you walk into a room and go, wow, it feels like weird in here. I don't know if that's happened to you.
Carol, has that happened to you?
It has happened to me. Mm-hmm. It's also happened many years after there's been a death in the room.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, so traumatic events such as deaths and violent or unnatural, unsettling deaths.
Yeah.
Suicides tend to leave large footprints in homes, and they stay there for a long time, or areas, depending on not necessarily a home, but yes, they leave footprints. The whole saying goes, if these walls could talk, everything that happens in the world leaves a footprint. It leaves, in particular cases, these type of things are a spiritual one or an energetic footprint. When we do stuff, we leave a trace behind, and sometimes that trace is temporary, and again, depending on the magnitude of it, maybe longer than that. And it also depends on the sensory of the person that's viewing it. Right? Some people are a lot less psychic, so to speak, than others, and can walk in that room that just happened and not sense it. Other people that are more in tune with that sort of thing can. It doesn't make it absent that somebody doesn't feel it, and if they don't have that ability to do so, well, then they just don't. So that's what happens with these type of spirits. And I'm sorry, Alan, you were going to ask something?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, so this thing may have absorbed some of the energy, but you don't really know if that's true, but it certainly got stronger.
Yes. And so at this point is to go back into the sense it out, try to diagnose it. And at this point, my gut feeling was to get it to speak to us. And we've got equipment and stuff, and we got ways in which to get him to speak a little bit or give him the opportunity to speak. And so we conducted an investigation, and we have, you've probably seen these on the ghost shows, the spirit radio thing, they call it the ghost box, which
spirit box, yeah.
Work. We do that often. We have some good results with it, and that's what we used here that night. And then whatever was there, that I could sense it, and I could pick its voice out. And whatever was there was interested in playing with us on the radio. We would ask a question, and it would give a very clear, audible, loud answer on the ghost box, but the answer was not consistent with the question at all. So it was just tinkering with us. You'd ask who you are, and it would say stuff like, television or radio or, just some random stuff. And then I got more direct with it, and I used my energy to get more direct with it to demand things. And then it started answering things directly, but I could sense what it was telling us was not truth whatsoever. It was just telling us stuff. And it got weird there for a little while. And then I used some religious provocation, and then it shut up. And it quit talking. And I went, and that gave me a real bad gut feeling. And I had a real bad gut feeling the whole time. And I said, let's pause for a second. So we paused for a second. We've been in this investigation, now actually actively investigating for a good couple hours, maybe 3. And I said, let's pause for a second. Let's separate ourselves, because the family was present. The husband and wife were present. I said, let's separate for a second. Told them, give us a minute. Let's go outside. And generally, we all as a team, we all have our little different thought processes and things, and we work so well because we can talk openly, and what one person may be feeling like intuitively may make sense. So we put our stories, our personal stories together, and start trying to diagnose what may be here. And so we're having those conversations outside, and my overall feeling is that it's negative. I don't know what or how strong, but it's not weak. And the rest of the team was like, kind of feel like that too. And so we got to get a way to get it to speak more, to diagnose it more. Or we were in the conversation of, why care? Why don't we just clean the house? And it may go back to the status quo like we've been going. And I just felt like maybe not. And
well, Mike, let's hold it there, and we'll get to the crux and conclusion of this story on the other side of this first break tonight. Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. My guest is Mike McCaskill, Ghost Whisperer, if you will. And we'll get more about this poltergeist. Carole Carle, you're still with me as well.
I am indeed.
And Carole will be sharing with us the Fox sister murderess story that is very complicated, but we'll try to boil it down for you as best as we can. It's really, really scary and fascinating at the same time. Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. I'll see you on their side. You don't want to miss it.
Back and forth. in the mind, beating conclusions I don't wanna find, 'cause I know it's not right.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRARadio.com.
You gone too soon. I can't sleep here all alone in my room. I can't hold.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host on KGRA Radio Live. And you can listen to us every week, 8 p.m. EST on KGRA Radio. My guest is Mike McCaskill, and my co-host is Carole Carle tonight. And now we only have a little bit of time to get Mike's full, creepy, scary story in. Mike, take it away, brother.
All right, well, I'll step back in right where I left off. So we're outside discussing the team how we do. The husband walks outside and basically interrupts a conversation. He's like, "Man, I'm sorry to interrupt you." And he looked a little frantic. And I'm like, "Hey, you all right?" And he's like, "Something's up with my wife, and I don't know what it is. Could you come in a second?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "Let's pause this, and we'll see what's up, and we'll come back outside and finish our conversation." And they're like, "Yeah, great." So we walk inside, and just a picture real quick, we walk into what would be their bedroom, and they have a dresser to the right with a TV on top of it. To the left is a couch. And then on the other side of the couch, they have a bed. And so she's sitting on the bed at the edge of the bed, faced at about a 45-degree angle away from us. So I'm seeing over her right shoulder, barely the half side of her face. And again, I've known this woman a while. We don't know each other. We're not friends. We don't visit. We just help them. But we spent some time with these people to understand these people, please excuse me. She never done anything like this before, and not even remotely close. But she's sitting on the edge of that bed, and she's doing a small rock back and forth, and she's kind of staring at the floor and the wall, and she's rocking back and forth, and she's very quiet. And when I walk in, I was like, "Hey," and he's like, "Look." I was like, and we're talking about her beside her. We're not 10 feet from her. I was like, "This ever happened before?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Anything like this ever before?" "No." And what was going on in the room spiritually was the stupidest, heaviest thing I felt in a long time. And he had that look of fear on him. And I turned around and look, and everybody on the team who's been to numerous places all over the world, we all had that look of, what in the world is going on here? And so I called her out by her name, and I'm like, "Hey." She didn't answer me. I'm like, "Hey, you all right?" And she didn't answer me again. And then I have this inner voice, if you will, this, call it a guardian angel, somebody that follows you around, my spirit helper that helps me with this gift. And I don't really ever speak to him. It comes off as a male voice to me, but when things get weird and I need his help, he talks. He doesn't ask for my permission, he just talks. And when he talks, something's up. And that's when he talked. He talked to me and he went, "Mike, that's not her." And I went, "Huh?" In the back of my head, "Huh?" And then he kind of gave me an impression of, that's not her. Whoever that is, she's right in front of me, physically in front of me. I'm looking at the wife. But that's not her. So I went with it because this spirit's gotten me out of some problematic places before in my life, and that's whole other stories. But been some heinous things, and I trust this spirit's voice because it's always been divine and done proper things. And so at that point, I felt the need, the urge, the pull to confront her or whatever. And I said, "Hey, you." And the rocking stopped. I said, "Oh, so we're not talking to the woman, I'm talking to you." And then the rocking still stayed stopped. And then this slow sort of heavier breathing started. She started breathing a little heavier, like she was getting anxious or something on this line. And I said, whoever you are, you're not invited in there, pointing at her body, or invited in this house. It's my suggestion to you that you take a leave right now.
Take a leave like the pill, or take a leave?
like carry your butt, take a leave, you're gone, you're done.
Sure.
Mike, can I stop you briefly? Can you describe what her physical body looked like? Tell us briefly her demographics, vaguely. How old was she? And is she seated in the middle of the bed, or are her feet on the floor?
Her feet are on the floor.
Okay.
She's sitting like someone would be sitting on the edge of their bed,
okay,
sitting there reading a book in a way. That's about the way her head angle is. There's no book in her hand, of course, but that's about, if you were to picture that. This woman is about 30 years old. She's blonde-headed. She's in good health. Her temperament state as a person is, I think, she didn't have large, but I think she had some minor sort of hormonal issues, meaning that her temperament was a little off-keister from time to time, but never enough to make me feel like, this person needs to be medicated, or this person needs some sort of help. And none of us on there felt like that. She's just, for lack of better terms, just a little odd. You know what I mean? And just a little temperamental. Like things will tend to set her off a little faster than it would someone a lot more calmer, right? So she's a little energetic type person. And we always kind of played that off as in, she's got 3 young kids at home by herself where her husband works.
Say no more. Yes, right.
Right. She has the right to be a little crazy. That's fine. But smart, well-spoken to us, always looked us in the eye. Just a normal, intelligent, run-of-the-mill human being. You know what I mean?
But not at this moment. But not sitting with her feet on. Okay.
Sitting with feet on the floor. The rocking stopped, and I have no intention to speak to her any longer to see what transpires. And I don't remember exactly what I said next, but I remember it being some sort of provocation, and I'm pretty sure that I used Jesus' name. But what I do remember is she turned and looked at me. And when she turned and looked at me, there were no white of the eyes whatsoever. All of it was black, every ounce of it. All black, like turn the light off black in her eyes. Mm-hmm. When she turned and looked at me. And then when she looked at me, I could tell, goosebumps, I could tell that whatever was looking at me is not her, and it's inhabiting her physical body. And whatever it is strong, stupid strong. And I looked at it in its eyes, and for some reason that I will never be able to explain to myself or you, I had the most terrifying feeling of flight fear in my life, but an overwhelming feeling of I'm not going anywhere, all at the same time. And you'll ask me maybe to explain that, and I just can't. It's just those two things is the best I can do at this point. And I went, "You will leave." And then it looked at me, smirked, and then kind of winked its eyes. And when it winked its eyes, I could tell the way it was looking at me. The best I can explain this to you is an internal psychic, if you will, or nervous system shock. I felt like a lightning bolt hit me in the back of my throat and went through my entire body and shook the hell out of me. And my hands, and I'm not the type to do this, my hands are trembling, and it was the weirdest thing. And it started to make me mad, but I let that go. I've dealt with these type of spirits before, and you can't have anger and fear. You have to be objective, and you have to be assertive, and you have to have a ton of faith or things are fitting to go really bad. And the smart thing to do is to run, right? Get out, leave, right? That's the smartest thing to do in these scenarios. I, unfortunately, am not that smart, I think. But I said, you leave, and then turned, stood up, and stared and screamed down what felt like the back of my spinal cord. You leave, and then took off and went around the corner, like went through the bedroom door to a hallway and started down the hallway. And there's overwhelming gut feeling that something really terrible is going to happen. And then that voice went, follow. And so I I started some prayers aloud, particularly Lord's Prayer and a few other things. I started those things real loud and very forceful, and the best amount of faith I could conjure out of my entire being at this point. And I walked out and followed, and I have no idea why or what is about to happen. And I followed, and she was about, and I keep saying she because it's her person, it's her body that's in this hallway. It's her. Just whatever's causing her to speak has the remote control to her body. You follow what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And it stops and it turns and screams at me and says, "You will leave now." And it was I can't explain the voice to you. There's movies that do these type of voices. It's pretty wild. And it was and the voice echoes without any sort of digital effects whatsoever. It's something really bad. And I said, "I can't. And I won't if I could." And then it screamed real loud, and then turned and walked and went toward the kitchen. And the first thing in my mind is going for a kitchen knife. And this is about to go bad. And the voice said, "Follow." And so I kept walking forward, right? And I made about 3 or 4 more steps, and the voice would stop. And I stopped. So again, another show, but this voice that I have has been a game changer for me in this ability, right? So I know when to listen. And I just stopped. And I stopped, and I could hear it fumble around in drawers and stuff back there in the kitchen in the dark, and come down the hallway marching right at me. And please pardon your listeners, but at this point I'm like, I'm going to try not to use that. I'm about to get stabbed. That was the first thing that went in my mind. And I don't know what to do, and then the voice goes, "Stand your ground." Okay. So I stood my ground, scared out of my mind at this point, because I'm thinking not a spiritual scenario. I'm about to get physically attacked and end up in probably the worst shape ever, right? If not death or something. It was a fear for my life at this point.
Sure. When you're facing the unknown like that, of course, all those things would go.
Yeah. And it walked right up to me and got almost to my face and went, "You will leave now." And I glanced down and I seen the knife in her hand. And I stared back at it. I stared right back at it, looked right in the eyes, and I went, "Like I said before, I can't leave this ground. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stand it, and you are going to leave." And it screamed again and took off back down the hallway and went into the living room. I know they have a second living room area, which has turned a corner out of my eyesight. And then the voice in my head goes, "Leave the house now. Right now." I went, "Okay." So I turned and looked at the crew. I said, "We got to go." And of course, everybody that was behind me that was chanting Lord's Prayer when I said we got to go, they were like, "Cool." Out the door.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And I calmly took the husband. The husband was like, "Hey, I need to go help." No, you come with me. And he's like, "But I need, no, please come with me. For your safety and everyone else's, come with me." He's like, "Okay." So he walks outside. Of course, everybody's like, "What the hell was that?" And then the voice goes, So I already knew what it was. I was like, "Hey, you guys seen movies, right?" They're like, "Yeah." "You know what's in there? We got a full-blown 1976, possession movie going on here. It's exactly what we got. Whatever that is taking over that woman's body, is controlling her body." And they're like, "What'd you follow her down the hallway for?" I was like, "I don't know." And my wife, who's been married almost 20 years, she's known me most of my life, and she understands this ability because she's been around me day to day, and she's been able to read me from outside looking in, and has understood things about me and had some observations that have really helped me grow because I'm unable to read myself, right? And she looks at me, she goes, "Yeah, what'd you do that for?" I said, "The voice." And she's like, "Oh, okay." She knew what's up. And then I know you got to keep this short, but the long story short of that, what happened to me in that hallway, the people behind me, their story's different. Ever so slightly different. All the same stuff. No one saw the knife. Half the voices, half the screaming that went on, they didn't hear it. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen to them. So, around that.
You were nuts, or?
Oh, they all know it went on. They saw what was going on. Everybody was in complete, absolute agreement that we've got a possession.
Okay.
They heard some of the screaming. They heard enough to solidify what they were dealing with. But it's like my experience and what it did to me, it did it to me and blinded everyone else from it. And I can't wrap my head around that. How did it do that?
And what, you just walked away? How did this?
Well, okay, to finish this, we stand outside and we're like, what do we do now? And I was like, I just know the voice said I can't go back in there. And he said to leave, or Dad told me to go back in there. And then the voice says, 5 more minutes, it will stop. I was like, okay. And then it was about, we talked a little bit more. Of course, the husband is freaking out, and I don't blame him. And half my team is freaking out. I got another teammate who was fairly new and wanted to really get into the stuff we do to really help people and see real stuff. And this dude's like, as soon as we get home, I'm done with you, buddy. I was like, hey, dude, I get it, bro. He's like, that's too much. I'm like, no, I understand. I had no intentions, man, of dragging you into that. I had no intentions that was even going to happen. He's like, yeah. And then here she come out the back door. The girl did. She walked across the yard. I was like, and of course, my buddy, another friend of mine that's with us, was in, what's the school to be a priest? I forget. He's in that school.
Seminary.
At the moment. Not a priest.
Seminary.
Mm-hmm. He's in seminary school. And he was like, here it comes. And I'm like, oh boy. But then there was a different feeling even from a distance as you come around. I was like, no, it's gone. And she came up there and she walked outside and she was just like, I came out here because I think I heard those voices out here. Where did everybody go? And why do I feel this way? And she burst out into tears. And it turns out, to talking to her a few minutes, she has utter zero memory. We said we were going to go outside and have a chat. She decided to sit down on the bed and rest her feet because she's been standing throughout the investigation. She's going to rest her feet. She was like, I'm going to put my head down for a minute and just kind of have a few minutes of maybe eye rest, maybe daydream, something like that. And she says, and here I am in the living room, sitting on the floor going, did I go to sleep? Did I sleepwalk in here? She has no memory of the entire incident whatsoever. None.
And so when you saw this entity in the hallway, when you say entity, was it separate from her or was it still a part of her and it was actually her in the hallway?
Part of her the entire time.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's as if her physical body was being remote controlled by something else.
So to conclude, was the poltergeist or possessive demon, whatever it might be, was it removed?
Okay, so to finish that, the answer to that is I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is because we went through the channels that we know that same night. We made some phone calls, got voicemails because it's now 2:00 in the morning on a Friday night. Got some voicemails, this and that. The husband was pretty sure it had something to do with the house. I'm not any longer have anything to do with the house, but he wanted to leave the house and go stay the night somewhere else. So we turned them loose. We made our phone calls, ended up in the presence of a Catholic priest in the next day or so, told him the story. And as a Catholic priest, we don't know. And told him the story because he was a local Catholic priest. So we were hoping to get them quick local help. So we find the Catholic church, find the Catholic priest, talk to the Catholic priest. He said he was very familiar with this sort of thing and that he has people in his dictionary or in his Rolodex, so to speak, that he can call to help with this thing. But he's not just going to go to those people's home, that they need to come to him. He said, if they'll come here, I, the church, give you my word that we will do everything in our power to help them. I was like, okay. He goes, you have my word as a priest, as a man, as a father, as a friend. I'm like, that's good enough for me. Good enough for me, Father. So we went back to the people, told them, hey, look, it's a Catholic priest over here. He knows people who know people who know people that can help you solve this problem. It felt like to me, my utter soul said, as I need to hand it over to an exorcist or to someone with a lot more training as far as removing a spirit from inside a person, so to speak. And then my whole whole mindset, whole soul, everything about me said, don't try to tackle that. You're not ready for that. And I'm like, okay. So we went and told the family, hey, look, got this guy. Here's his number. He said he wants to help you, but you have to reach out. You have to make the phone call to him. He's not going to come here. He will come here once you reach out and you talk to him, but he can't initiate it. He said that's his rule. He can't initiate it. You've got to come. And I was like, okay, I got it. I was like, okay, please let me know when you make the call. Please let me know whatever it is that goes on. And if I can help any at all, I'll absolutely help. If you want me to go with you to the church, I'll do that. Anything, I'll help. He's like, good. Let me talk to the wife. We're going to make this call. Cool. So a few days go by. I call back to follow up because I haven't heard from them. A few days go by. Well, they went and talked to their pastor because they are Baptist. They went and talked to their pastor. Their pastor told them that she needs to go be evaluated, and she probably needs to be put on some sort of hormone imbalance medication, most likely. Go see her doctor. He'll come by. He'll say a simple prayer in her house, and that'll solve everything. We know that's not going to work. And I told him, I said, hey, look, by all means, please trust your pastor. I get that. He's your pastor, has been your pastor. He's like, no, we just started going to church, a couple weeks after we got here, and you've been here a couple weeks after, so we've only been here 3 or 4 weeks. So you don't really know the pastor. He's like, no, not really. Please go talk to that priest. Please go talk to the Catholic priest. I know you may not be Catholic, but please go talk to him. They're the oldest institution of religion. Anybody that's ever watched any movie knows that the Catholic Church has a ton of information about what you're being afflicted by. I don't want to talk bad about Baptists, but they're not prepared. And I don't think they want to be prepared for this sort of stuff. And he's like, no, I get it. I understand. I said, please call him. Please call the priest. Because I would love to see you get help. I would love to help you every way I can. He's like, okay, we will. And then so I followed up a week or so later, and I said, hey, how you doing? He's like, good. And I said, you call the priest? No, we decided just to do what the Baptists want to do. And I was like, okay. How are things? Things are still pretty weird. Any incident like that again? No, there hasn't been an incident like that again, but she does act strange from time to time. I was like, man, dude, it showed it. I already know. I've been down this road. I've worked another case like this. It's like, man, it showed its face. And it's showing its face every now and then.
Well, don't
go bad, dude.
Don't take it lightly, I think is the lesson. And it's funny when you said earlier that you were to stand your ground.
Yep.
My first thought was when Ray Stantz in Ghostbusters told Peter Venkman to stand his ground, and he got slimed. So I thought, oh my God, not a good idea.
Yeah,
this is not going to turn out well.
Do you like green? How do you feel about green? Okay.
Right. But we got to wrap it up. Is there anything else to this story that we must know?
No, I think that's enough for one night.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think that's enough for a lifetime for you.
Yeah, it's one of those things I was like, man, you should have been there, but really, you shouldn't have been.
Yeah, thrills and chills, yes.
I really would have rather not. I would really rather not to ever experience something like that again, but knowing the way my case log works and knowing the way my calling is, it's a matter of time. I seem to be that guy, and I don't know why, and I don't guess I ever will, so I just quit asking that question. The biggest thing I hope that people get from that story is things like this happen. It happened to me. That's the second time that it's happened to me. The first time wasn't near as profound as this one, but it was pretty wild. Things like this exist. The movies are mostly fake, but they got the idea from somewhere. So it happens. It's been there. And the biggest thing for me is how big the ghost hunting has become in the last, say, 7 or 8 years for people that are just having fun with it, running around cemeteries. Please be careful what you invite into your life. Please be careful what you do, because there's a rule book that's going on the other side of that veil, and we don't get to read it. And so
Yeah, we don't know what's going on the other side, or in between the spaces that we live in, for that matter. Mike, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you for having me.
All right, and happy Halloween too.
Happy Halloween, you guys. Have a good night.
Trick or treat.
All right, so stick around, everybody. Carol, I'm so sorry. We ran out of time in this portion to talk about the Fox sisters. So let's talk during the break and decide what we want to do.
Absolutely. I'm down with that.
Okay, so everyone else stand by. We'll figure out how Carol and I are going to shuffle things around a bit. But also, Cheryl Costa is joining us in the second hour, and it will be a bewitching evening. This is Alan B. Smith of Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. Hang in there. We'll be right back.
My heart say, hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. You're lost in a bad way.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRARadio.com.
Can take it all back now. Been lost in a bad way. I've gotta let you go. You're supposed to be so close to me. How mostly that goes to me, yeah.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your host. Coming up for this hour, Cheryl Costa will be talking about witchcraft in the modern times. But before we get to Cheryl, just a couple of things I want to share with you. KGRA now is on video. It's starting in its earliest stages right now, its own TV programming. The first introductory episode is on the KGRA YouTube channel, and you get to see Warren and Race himself just being cool and giving us the lowdown on the future of KGRA and the history and how it all developed. It's a really interesting, I think it was about an hour, and I watched the whole thing today, and I'm glad I caught it before tonight's show. There's going to be some updates, some tweaking as they develop the channel. So if you have any constructive feedback, that's fine, but just know that they are working and they're listening to everything that you, KGRA listeners, have to say, because we all appreciate you very much. In regard to the first hour, Mike's story being that of Poltergeist, and one that was a little bit, well, let's just say I wouldn't like to be in his shoes. And we couldn't interrupt him. We had to let him finish the story, which unfortunately meant that we didn't get to talk about the Fox sisters with Carole Carle. So, Carol, again, I'm so sorry for that.
Well, I just promise no one will haunt you in the night. That's how it is the nature of the beast, and absolutely goes with the territory. Who are you kidding? To leave people, the gentle listeners, on a cliff with a story like Mike's? No, you couldn't do that. So that's not an issue. And I understand you have a remedy for that, a plan B. Yes.
Plan B. So what's the tease for the Fox sisters?
Oh, the tease. Oh, tune in. Next week? Are we talking? Okay.
Next week,
to find out how a peddler lost his life for $500 and set tables rocking across the world. I mean, that's right off the top of my head. Okay, sure. So we'll go with that. All right.
Yeah. And some blood and murder and
oh yes, blood, murder.
Very interesting things.
Blood, murder, and the absolute vindication. The absolute will start with the punchline, which was the finding of Charles B. Rosner's bones many years later, exactly where the Fox sisters, all three of them, said they were, because he told them. Okay, yeah. Yes, all right. So anyway, there we go.
No, absolutely.
And now, good night.
Well, it's an epic story. So everyone tune in next week. The first hour, it'll just be Carol and I. We'll be talking about the Fox sisters. Carol, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Enjoy Cheryl Costa. We will be listening.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So Cheryl Costa is with us. Cheryl, she is not only a ufologist who's been on Paranormal Now before, but she is a practicing witch. And she has her own program, and she talks about this. I don't know. I see often, I would say almost daily posts on the subject matter on Facebook from Cheryl. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
All right. So, Cheryl, welcome again to Paranormal Now.
Hi. Nice to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. Tonight it was more of like a Halloween powwow, so I'm glad you jumped in, and we get to talk about things that are somewhat related, but in reality, witchcraft has nothing to do with, in my opinion, Halloween. Witchcraft is a worldwide phenomenon. People have been practicing different trades, if you will, in different continents throughout history. But I want to get your take on what modern witchcraft is and what that means now.
Well, okay, I think I had to explain this to somebody this afternoon. There's about 60 different traditions in the world, okay? And there are probably another 100 or 120 sub-traditions underneath those 60. And then as you get down to the individual practitioner, there's an individual style and approach to these things. So in a way, you sort of have millions of traditions, but they're kind of rooted in about 60 different flavors of it. But it's their methods may vary a little bit, but for the most part, the craft, and some places it's not called witchcraft. It might just be shamanism or whatever you might want to call it. But whatever the deal is that the same basic mystical practices are done. They're just dressed up a little different, and they're just called different things. Running joke with them are my friends. I used to have friends introduce me as a friendly neighborhood witch doctor. Okay. I've been referred to as shaman. When I write my own resume for this kind of topic matter, I refer to myself as a mystic witch. Yes, I started out as Wicca 40 years ago. But practices do evolve. Okay. And we can get into that a little bit. There's this idea of an outer circle, an inner circle, and we'll call it secret circles. And the outer circle is like anybody can touch it if they buy a book in the bookstore. Okay? Anybody can touch it. Okay? Anybody can walk into a church, a Catholic church or a Protestant church, and touch it. Okay? To be part of an inner circle and really involved with it and be, as they say, one of the church ladies, that's another level in. And then in some traditions, there are the secret, very innermost secret circles. Those are the things we imagine go on and behind the walls in the Vatican. That kind of thing, okay? And within the craft tradition, I can only talk about American craft. My experience over 40 years has been that the outer tradition is pretty much the people have picked up a book someplace and practice solitary craft, which is probably what most people practice. They're into it. They read about it. They practice it, and it fulfills them. If they decide to practice with other, I hear people like that all the time on Facebook. They'll say, "I've been practicing Wicca for a couple of years now. I'd like to plug into a coven." And the movies would have you think that everybody lives in a coven that does the craft, and that it's more the exception than the rule. Okay, covens are more like a fraternity or sorority at an Ivy League school.
Right? Like if you can get together with other practicing Wiccans or witches, right, and just do things together. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a coven.
Yeah, well, no, I used to tell my students, I used to refer to a bunch of you get together and do a ceremony a couple of times a year, maybe for one of the holidays, and you do a potluck supper with it or something like that. That's a gaggle. Okay, and if you loosely get together and different people come each time, I call that a gaggle. If you start getting a little bit more structured, where maybe you got your own phone tree and one or two people seem to drive everything and take the responsibility for making it happen, that's a circle. Okay, some groups, some gatherings, some circles get formal enough to call themselves a coven. But my experience with the covens is that covens tend to be a little bit more exclusive. They tend to be, I don't want to say cliquish. Think of it more like you're a member of a drill team or a musical ensemble. Okay, and once you get a good team working together, you're very hesitant to bring someone else in that might upset the harmony of what that group is doing, the energy. And I use the term drill team because some groups that I've talked to have that a rigid. They do it a certain way. They're all on the same page, and they have a certain mindset and a certain focus to what they practice, and that's what they do. Now, they may have members of their group host those outside circles of maybe they offer a free class on craft and things like that, but they don't tell you they're part of an inner circle. They just say, hey, we're teaching a community class. It's a public service, da-da-da-da. And then maybe you get to join a gaggle of people they invite together. But basically, it's it's their way of screening people, so to speak. And if they see somebody come along, a bright, shining light come along that might be compatible with them, they might invite them to sort of, to use a college fraternity or sorority term, pledge for their coven. Okay. Over 40 years, I got invited to join probably about 5 or 6 covens, and I was very quickly washed out from the pledging process. The answers given were you're too much of a wild duck, you're too much of a free thinker. When I had a television show 30 years ago when nobody had television shows on witchcraft. This is before the internet. This is back on Access Television. And I was getting international press visibility because of this cable television program we were producing in Virginia. I literally had 2 different covens were screening me for possible membership, and they said, you are flat out too visible for our tastes. We feel that there would be a guilt by association. We don't want to be caught dead with you on the street.
Jeez.
For fear of somebody pointing. Remember, this is the bad old days of witchcraft. 30 years ago, people did not want the visibility like we have now.
So it came from a place of fear. Fear, privacy. It could cost them a job. It could cost them a marriage. I had a television writer for ABC came to me during my television program. I was producing. I wasn't even really on camera in the show, but when we had press people come and talk to us, I was on camera, and what was funny about it was how do I want to say this? I struggle to say how to put this. The words come hard for this kind of conversation. There were a lot of people who feared knowing me and or feared being associated with me in public because I had this visibility. And if Cheryl's a witch, are those people she's having dinner witches? Okay, and that was an issue. And nowadays it's like being gay. Lots of people are out now, and they're out and proud. And witchcraft is pretty much the same way. You still have a lot of people who are very private about it. I had an ABC 2-hour movie writer come to me once. He said, "Hey, I've read where some women have lost, in the course of like a divorce case or something like that, the husband will, in some effort to try and get custody of the kids, would come out and try and pull some 500-year-old anti-witch law off the books, and them and their lawyer try to besmirch the witch in divorce court, modern divorce court." Okay. And he says, "Do you know any people like that?" And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Come to dinner Friday night, and I'll introduce you to 12 of them." And because I knew a lot of people in those days. And 30 years ago, that was not an uncommon practice. These days, most judges, and even then, a lot of judges were laughing that kind of a custody argument out of court. And these days, it just gets blown at some of the reins. It really does. It's not like it was. And back 30 years ago, that's what we were trying to change. The reason we got so much press was the 2 of us that were doing the program. Me as producer, a lady by the name of Kestrel Angel, who was the host of the show. She was 25 at the time. And I've always felt bad that I put her at the center of world attention. She was the face of the program internationally. Okay. I'm sure you both knew that there was risks to take on, right? I mean,
well, both of us were kind of like at the edges of our family, if you say. My family disowned me at that point. Her family kind of gave us the silent treatment. We knew there was a risk with this, but we knew that there was a greater good, and that's why we did it. We did 88 major domestic and international interviews, but the only people that didn't come to talk to us were the Soviets and the Communist Chinese. We're credited our little $50 a week cable access program. Now, remember, the thing you have to understand, it wasn't a slotchy. I can't say the word tonight. It wasn't a sloppy operation because I used to be an industrial filmmaker for IBM. Okay, I knew my trade. I had studied filmmaking in college, so I used to make industrial movies for IBM. And so when I moved to the DC area and I wasn't making movies for them anymore, I got involved with a couple of the top-notch cable access stations in the country, and they happened to be in the DC area. And I got my certifications there, and I set off to get put this program on called Kestrel and Company. And the best I could get. Go ahead.
Real quick, for those who may not have any idea what cable access is, can you explain that?
Oh, okay. Back in the day when there was like 5 to 7 cable channels on your local cable system, there was some laws passed that said that they had to have some kind of community programming available. Okay. And there were some associations, nonprofit associations, that came around offering grant money to local groups to have to take advantage of that channel that was available to produce locally produced programs. In some of the larger metropolitan areas, the production quality was as good as any of the broadcast stations, but it was all run by volunteers. Yeah. Okay. And so I went through a certification program for this, and then I tried to get a program put together, and I showed the woman my credentials, and best she would give me, Witchcraft. Best she would give me was 6 episodes for a summer replacement program. So I started putting those programs together, and somebody from the Associated Press sat in the back of our production one night. And a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the studio. It said, hey, Cheryl, we got a problem. I said, what's that? The place burned down or something? And he said, no. He says, a 300-word story went out on the Associated Press. I said, did we get a little bit of press ink in the local paper? He said, no, Cheryl. ABC and CBS News are sitting in the lobby, and they want to talk to the witches. And at that point, that started the ball rolling, and we had an average of 8 to 10 press organizations call us a day for the next 12 weeks. Whew. Okay.
So now this all feeds into public awareness of witchcraft. That was sort of your other mission, right?
Well, the other mission was, during the course of which we got interviewed. We were on Larry King the night, Larry King and CNN, the night our show debuted. And a couple of weeks later, Entertainment Tonight came and visited us. And they asked.
King was a big deal then, too.
It was a big deal then. And they quite literally asked me on camera, and I've got my witch garb on and everything. And they said, what would make a modern show now? Because we tried to tell them that, all this Satan stuff and Rosemary Baby stuff is baloney. It's not what real witchcraft is about. And they said, what would make a real show? And I said, a real show right now? I said, at that time, remember, this is 30 years ago, would be a cross between 30-something and Bewitched. And that's about the time, just shortly after, we got a call from the people who ended up producing Charmed, the original Charmed.
Sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So we had input into various people at that time. It's another generation of filmmakers are now making films and making TV programs. And so that's why we've got things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and it's all about Satan and all this other stuff. And it's nonsense. Real Witchcraft is not about that. And but we made a dent in our time. We are actually credited for a riot in Rome.
Well, how did that happen?
I got a phone call from Bill Greenwood from ABC. And he told me, he says, you guys caused a riot in Rome. And I said, how the heck did that happen? And he says, well, you did interviews with like the Italian equivalent of Look and the Italian equivalent of People magazine. And I said, yeah. And I said, they all hit over a 2-week period over in Italy. I said, okay. He said, you did an interview with Italian Rome Channel 4. And I said, yeah, we did. And he said, that ran on their evening news. or the extension to the evening news. And after it ran, between those articles being in those magazines and that running on TV, these women started coming out of their apartments into the alleys and marching through the alleys, and they were chanting. And by the time they got to the front gates of the Vatican, they were 3,000 strong, chanting in Italian, "We are the witches. We have returned."
Holy cow.
And I got like I said, I got 2 phone calls from news guys that knew me because they'd already done stories on this, and they told me this. And this was like 4 or 5 months after our program had hit the air in DC, and we were just flabbergasted because we had a $50 a week cable access program, and we were causing all these waves.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I guess
we ended up doing 70 episodes.
And these people in Rome, and was it all women?
Yeah.
It was all women. Did these women, it was their way of saying, we have a right to exist, and we're not going to hide it anymore?
Yeah. And that was amazing. And between that, Entertainment Tonight, Larry King, and a couple of other very sizable things, the president of the cable access channel called me in, pushed a 13-week contract in front of me. I signed it, and she pushed another one in front of me. So I had 2 13-week contracts in front of me, and ultimately we produced 70 episodes of the program.
Mm-hmm.
And
can you get this program anywhere?
There's about 4. If your listeners Google, probably for YouTube, Google for YouTube, Kestrel, Kestryl and Company, Kestrel and Company, on YouTube. You'll probably find 3 or 4 episodes we recovered about 4 or 5 years ago to use in a documentary. Industrial beta videotape from that era didn't hold up very well. But we managed to recover about 12 episodes. We put 3 or 4 of them up on YouTube. Okay. You got to understand the television video standards at that time were much lower than the digital standards we have now, sure. That kind of thing. But they're there to see. They're very, very low. They're a very slower paced show. It was in a talk show format. Literally, the witch in early episodes, you'll see her sitting on a pillow in front of a coffee table that's set up with an altar, talking to her guests who are sitting on pillows. The second season, they're sitting in wingback chairs. But
I love that. That's great. That's great.
That is the flavor of the whole thing. Yeah. A year and a half, almost 2 years into it, we did rituals on television a couple of times. We had people in there. In fact, when Entertainment Tonight came, we had 75, 80 people in there doing a holiday ritual. Okay, we had a 4-camera shoot going, and I directed it in the control room, and I had a CNN crew in there and an Entertainment Tonight crew in there shooting video while we were producing the episode. It was crazy. It was absolutely nuts. But the goofy thing about it was, to show you where we were in that day and age. Mm-hmm. All right. Kestrel was getting burned out. She'd done 60 plus shows, and she was fried. Plus her folk singing had taken off. So one particular weekend, which we used to shoot 4 episodes in a weekend. Okay, so one weekend she was scheduled to be at this folk singing concert with a band she was part of. So I sat in and did the 4 episodes. Okay, so we would shoot 4 in one afternoon. Sure. And the way we did this, you would change your clothes between tapings, so it looked like 4 separate days. And remember, there were new cable channels coming on at that time. Okay, there was new channels coming out all the time. Anybody remembers the era? There was 7 or 8 channels. If you were in a bigger city, maybe you had 15 channels or something like that. But there were new channels coming all the time. And a predecessor, and I want to say it's a predecessor to Ovation, but I don't remember exactly what it was. They came to me and said, how would you like to go to the next step and go up to a real commercial national channel? And we were only on a couple of small cable systems in the mid-Atlantic. And I said, sure, let's do that. And the Witchcraft, they wanted me as the host. They saw the episodes that I had done and they liked me better than they liked the original host because I'm up and perky. And the witchcraft community in the Mid-Atlantic rose up and said, no, we don't want a transsexual priestess representing us.
Again, okay.
At that time, and this is 1992 time frame, transgender people were lower than whale poop, and they just did not want that, and they shot themselves in the foot, because here we had an opportunity. We had 30 years ago, we had the opportunity to really take control of the narrative at that time, and they put their foot down. And I had a lot of very, very powerful families come to me and sit me down and say, no.
Are you able to forgive people who realized the wrongs of their ways back then?
I have forgiven them, and I've had dinner with some of those same families in the years following that, and they praised what we did. We did groundbreaking stuff there, bringing out and actually showing people what we really do versus what the movies say we do. Okay,
right,
and that's what we were trying to do. Okay, so here we are coming up on Halloween. Okay. Sure. The 2 years of our show, we were in everybody's Rolodexes. This is before everybody's pads, obviously. Mm-hmm. And Kestrel and I, that first season, actually the second season, we had to do that as well. Come Halloween, I took a vacation day from my day job, stayed at the house. Kestrel went to a friend of ours' house. And from 6 o'clock in the morning to about 9, 10 o'clock at night, we were both doing we were doing talk shows on different networks all day long. Is where we were being guested for shows.
And so this is drumming up more awareness.
Oh, it did a lot. So I guess the bottom line was we had some kind of an impact at that time. And that was it.
I'd say in the 90s, growing up, it was markedly different than I could see the changes happening in front of my eyes in so many respects, as far as more open-mindedness to all kinds of peoples and topics and issues. And by the time the late 90s, early 2000s had come around, like you said, Charmed and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all these other kind of shows that were saying, hey, this isn't all the satanic stuff you saw in the 80s. There's some more to be. There's something more rich to all of this, and it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Correct. So ultimately, what happened is I walked away from it. It ran in reruns on a number of cable channels in the DC, Delaware, Baltimore area, and I walked away from it when they said no, we don't want transsexual priestess representing us. I had to walk away from it. So I went back to radio, and I ended up being, besides my day job in aerospace, my other, as I call, hobby job, 30 hours a week. I was the operations manager for Business Talk Station, and I had a 2 to 3 hour show on Saturday night, very much like Art Bell. And I was to stop in the Mid-Atlantic if you had a book on UFOs, witchcraft, ancient cities, ancient aliens, you name it, the gig. And I had a show very much like yours on an FM station in DC for the better part of 3 years.
What did you like better? Do you like, well, you do radio now, but do you prefer radio over the TV format?
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here in my pajamas. I couldn't do that in television. Television takes so much. I remember, like I said, I used to produce television, and the amount of effort that goes into it is pretty huge. Now, let me give you a flavor here. I've been in development of a television program. There's a lot of hotness and interest in UFO programming ever since last year with History Channel, with all the hot programs they had. Sure. So there's been a lot of new programs coming out. There's a lot of schlock out there. There's been a few gems out there as well. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with a Los Angeles producer who wants to do a program based on the fact that based on my spouse and I wrote a book on UFO statistics. So we're developing a program like that, and I can't tell you more than that because I'm under non-disclosure agreements. But we're very close. We're very close to signing a deal with a network you would probably recognize in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's so exciting! I'm so glad for you. And also, don't you have a book coming out as well?
Yes. So I'll tell you about that in a minute. Well, here's the deal with this. We were very close to signing a deal about 2 months ago. And my spouse, Linda, says, does our producer know that you're a card-carrying witch? I've never brought it up. It's just, I would vet yourself, do him, make sure it's not going to be an issue. So I did. I called him up, told him what the deal was, broom-toting, cauldron-stirring, card-carrying witch. And he didn't see a problem. He says, if somebody makes a problem out of it, we'll exploit the snot out of it. So what the heck? We're in entertainment, right? And I thought that was the end of it. About 2-3 weeks later, he calls me up on a Friday afternoon. He says, hey, my development team found out there's a whole bunch of networks out there that are looking for programming like this. Would you be willing to do a program like this? And I says, okay, yes, but here's the rules. It's not going to be some creepy reality show. We're not going to be running around with jet black hair and tons of black eyeliner. It's not going to be gothy. If we do a show that's smart like Ancient Aliens, the people I know and the people they know, we can plug you into the 60 major traditions on the planet. We can go anywhere and show you anything. He said, deal.
That sounds exciting. That sounds like a whirlwind adventure, actually.
Yes. So, and the other thing, before you start looking through the television listings to find it, television development is something that I can only refer to as slow as drunk snails.
Okay. Have you seen drunk snails before?
It's you can imagine what I just told you. So no, it's in development, but right now it's sort of taking a back seat to the one that's looks like it's going to hit pay dirt, and then we'll develop the other one. But we've consented to it, and I've got a mystical posse lined up. I've got probably 20 prominent people that I know that have been in this business, in the craft business, a long time, various different traditions. You name the tradition, we probably got somebody doing it. And so if this comes to pass, we're going to try and do a show not unlike Ancient Aliens and show people that this is just a form, that the mysticism is in a fine, wonderful, ancient tradition, and ain't nothing nasty going on here.
Right. And I love that you use the term mystical posse. Can I borrow that someday?
Yeah, sure.
I love that. All right. Okay, well, let's take it back to right
sure.
now.
Wherever you want.
As far as witchcraft goes, where are we now? Where do you think modern witches fit in today's society?
Well, okay. Hey, if you told me last Christmas, I would have seen an article that said that witches outnumbered the Presbyterian Church. I would have wanted a case of whatever you were drinking, but that was a real article last year. And I saw one here about a week ago in the New York Times that said, why is everybody suddenly a witch coming out, And there's two thinkings there. A lot of people have decided to stand up for what they are. Our society over the last 3 years has been a little on the oppressive side. And I think a lot of people have said, I'm going to stand up and be counted. That's partly that. Mm-hmm. Also, some of the deeper mystics that I know, we've all had a couple long conversations about this. And it seems like the gods are pushing this too. It seems like they're looking at our planet's in deep trouble with our climate and a few things, and pollution, a few things like this. And it seems like the gods are standing up to this thing and rallying all their troops to stand up for this. And that's also what it seems to be. But something's going on. And let's take this a step further. When I got this thing with the producer and we were talking, I reached out to one of my old friends who participated on our program back 30 years ago. And I brought it up to him, and he simply listened to what I had to say and he said, 30 years ago, Saturn was in the same position that it's in now. Go for it.
Ooh, that's fascinating. how much stock do you take in astrology?
Personally,
yeah.
Nah. I'm not a big astrology person. I mean, I pay attention to sun signs and some things, but there's some things that I know that they got wrong because Western astrology, unlike the Vedic astrology, when I'm going to talk like the Hindu astrology, that type of thing, it's been frozen and it's got errors in it. Okay, because they haven't gone along with the progression of the stars, and it's off. It's off by upwards of somewhere between 15 and 20 days because they haven't moved it along. And so it's been stagnant here in the West for hundreds of years. And I'm not an expert on it, but I've had experts on my program to talk about it. And so I've never put a great deal of stock into it. I've looked into other aspects of mysticism, and I'm a staff writer for Wicca magazine, and I've been writing those kinds of articles in Wicca magazine. It's a subscription magazine.
So why are witches associated to Halloween in such a significant way?
Okay, we have what we call the Wheel of the Year. We have 8 high holy days.
Yeah.
And Samhain is Samhain, or what you would call Halloween. Samhain is spelled Samhain, Samhain or Samhain. That is our New Year's for all intents and purposes. Okay, it's a season of celebrating the end of the year, so to speak. It's New Year's. Okay, it's also a season of when people. It's a season of release. And a season of I've got a thing out in my living room. It's a sculpture of the Wheel of the Year, and if you look at the one for Samhain, there's a big cauldron there, and there's implements of war like chest armor and swords and that kind of thing laying next to this cauldron. And it was a season, particularly in the Celtic countries, where they would put the armor of these dead soldiers into this cauldron on Samhain Eve and stir the pot to release their souls to go out and become new babies.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so it's a season of release. It's a time of contact with ancestors. And something unusual with this particular season, we were talking about it on my program this afternoon. There's a lot of people right now having contact with their ancestors. People are having the craft people I'm talking to are having massive dreams with their ancestors, which is highly unusual. So there's this remembrance and there's this release. In my case, hey, I've been disowned, so I've decided to cut my family loose. Okay, there's my release. Okay. Another thing with Samhain is that back in the agricultural era, the last of the harvest was in. Mm-hmm. Okay. Being that this was probably going to be the last feast before the dark and the cold of winter. And there were farm animals that might not make it through the winter. Those were the ones they slaughtered to make a feast, part of the feast meal, that type of thing. And
the humans who they suspected may not make it through the winter as well. I mean, when you were sick or
don't go there.
Elderly. I mean, it could be.
Don't go there. Yeah. Don't go there. No, that's that. I don't know where you're getting that, but I have never heard of that in the tradition. Okay.
No, I'm not saying in the tradition, but just as human beings, winters were rough. And
you might not make it through the winter, but exactly. We're not saying that we slaughtered them, on Halloween. No, we don't. Also, the other issue is what scared people was the fact that there was. This is probably where our costume side of it comes from. There were people. This is when the veil between the worlds is thin. Okay. And visitation from the elders and from ancestors and that type of thing are incredibly possible. And in an earlier age, without all the distractions that we have with televisions and phones and all the technology we have that distract us, people were a little bit more easygoing and we're probably a little bit more connected to the land, and we're more sensitive to these things. A lot of people used to get drunk just so that they would be drunk when if somebody from their dead relatives showed up to visit, they wanted to be drunk for that, so that's where some of the that's kind of celebration came about. But the key thing was they wanted to have this feast before the dark of the winter and the uncertainties of that winter. As you said, who are we going to lose over the winter? Elders very frequently, sometimes weak and wimpy kids wouldn't make it through the winter. So this was that embrace of the fact that we're going to have one last feast before we face the dark of the winter.
No, I have Newt. How far off was Shakespeare?
I couldn't tell you because I didn't know him personally.
Okay. It's worse.
Okay. But the thing you got to know about that
stereotype.
Yeah, the thing you got to know about that, and you hear people talk about. I'll give you a couple of examples. Which ingredients? Okay, eye of newt. Okay, hen's teeth. There's one there's one formula I remember reading many years ago. It called for a Negro's head. Okay. Well, hen's teeth is a particular herb, and it kind of looks like a hen's beak with teeth. Okay. I'm not 100% sure what that is. But if you throw a newt into a coffee pot out on a campfire, I guarantee you everybody who drinks that coffee will be dead in a couple of hours because the toxins that are in their skin is some kind of tetrotoxin, and it's very deadly, 10,000 times more powerful than cyanide, So you can see where some of this newt stuff is coming from. A Negro's head, that was a particular type of wild cabbage that is got that dark purple, black look to it. Okay, so usually these oddball references, as we look at them now, were usually some type of herb or something on this order. And I've had people come to me, somebody gave me this 100-year-old spell book. It's probably useless because you wouldn't understand the terminology to know what the colloquial term for a particular herb was without a lot of research and things like this. So. And magic is required. In order to do magic, you have to be able to visualize. And if these things that were being used were there to help you visualize a particular quality you've wanted to do in your spell, or you wanted an element of quality to be in your spell. And if you're reading something you don't understand what all these things mean, it's useless to you. In fact, the spell book that I might have written 25 or 30 years ago, millennial would look at it now and think it was gobbledygook. I know people right now that these kids that don't know how to deal with a dial telephone. Did
you see? There was a video that went, I think, semi-viral, if you will, where they put a dialed telephone in front of their kids and asked them to figure out how to use it, and they couldn't crack the code. It was hilarious.
Yeah, well, but that's the same thing. We have colloquial terms that it's constantly changing. And so like when somebody tells me that they have this very old spell book their grandmother gave them, it's probably useless unless you know the context, what those things are, and maybe the context it's being used in. Now, I got one more thing for your audience here.
Sure.
When you see in the movies, these people get up there and they do these big, powerful, dramatic incantations. Mm-hmm. They're useless because the real magicians, the real mystics, are doing it with nonverbal communication. That's what your younger self, that part of your spirit that is connected to everything, everywhere, every when, the force, if you want to call it that, only understands pretty pictures, music, sign language, shadow play, charades, that kind of thing. That part of you is only responsive to nonverbal communication. That's why people use tarot cards, things like this. Okay, these are tools. And so when you see somebody I can always tell the newbie in the Wicca. They'll come in there and they've been working at it, and they come in and they come to do a circle and they pull up this big scroll of some kind of a ritual that they've written and they start oratory. And I said, oh God, former Catholic. Okay, great. And here we go. And we're just going to hear this big oratory, and it's useless in terms of magic unless it's really got a lot of visual cues built into the incantation. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't.
You originally said Wiccan, Gardnerian Wiccan?
That's what I was initially exposed to. Yes.
How does one differentiate themselves from other forms of witchcraft? Because if someone says it's Santeria, is that witchcraft? Is that something else?
Well, it's a form of craft. Don't throw the witch on there. It's a form of magical craft. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So that's an important distinction that we should be aware of in our vernacular.
Yeah, the lady I had on today, Dr. Raspold, Katrina she practices hoodoo and I'm going to pronounce it wrong, bruja. Okay, and that's more of a Mexican tradition. Okay, and I've had people on my show that are practicing Peruvian traditions and Brazilian traditions. So there's all these different flavors, and they may approach it differently, but their objectives are pretty much the same. Okay, there's only so many ways you can dress up Mr. Goodwrench, as they say. It's similar mechanics. They just approach it differently, and the outward signs may be a little goofier, or not goofy, but just different than what you're expecting to see. And what we see here for witchcraft, we'll say Gardnerian, which was some of my early reading, but my real training was in Alexandrian tradition, who was kind of a competitor to Gerald Gardner. Okay, Alexander's. Okay, I'm a 3rd degree Alexandrian priestess for credentials purposes. I'm ordained in 2 other traditions. I'm a priestess of Isis, which is my primary tradition these days. Nothing to do with the Golden Dawn. For those of you who are listening, it has nothing to do with the Golden Dawn. And by the way, I have reverend credentials to the Aquarian Tabernacle Church of Index, Washington. Okay, I am Reverend Cheryl Costa, Wicca priestess. Okay, and I've done chaplaincy type work and things like this for hospitals. Okay, I've done it both as a Buddhist nun and I did it as a Wiccan priestess. Still do. It depends on when I get called. So we're clergy like anybody else. And
right. That's the respect.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Yeah. And that's what's happening now. You had mentioned that there are more witches than Presbyterians, but my understanding for a good 10 years now, practicing witchcraft has been on the rise, if not exponentially, steadily so, that it's the fastest growing religion, if you will, in the United States.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to refer to that as the fastest growing outer circle of craft religions. Okay. Remember, I said there's an inner circle, and then there might be an inner secret circle. Now, the inner secret circle, a lot of people think, oh, they must be doing something evil and terrible in there. No, I've got vows and inner circles within Tibetan Buddhism. Okay. And I can tell you for the secrets we're dealing with are, think of it like a physics professor, knows the detail at a level that the high school physics teacher doesn't. Okay. It's that kind of thing. It's not that there's some more evil or powerful thing. They understand some hidden meaning that is elusive to everyone else. Okay. And I've had people ask me, well, do you know some deep, dark secrets? I said, I know a lot of secrets, but it's more because it's inner circle type of knowledge. And unless you're prepared and you've done the book work to understand what the meaning of it is, it's pearls before swine. You just aren't going to understand it. Now, you were talking about this being very popular. I'll give you an example. Down in Asheville, North Carolina, there's a lady down there by the name of Lady Passion. Okay, she's a strict old Gardnerian witch. Okay, and her high priest, I can't remember his name, but Lady Passion, she is as blind as a stone. Okay, she is stone cold blind. Okay, and she started about 15, 20 years ago, started doing a Samhain ceremony in the park. Okay, they had to get ordinances changed, all kinds of things. Okay, now she has had, back in the day, hey, 50 people showed up. They thought that was a good deal. She does these circles now on Samhain or on Halloween, and they have to do it. They have to cast the circle around a stadium to do it, to have all the people hand in hand all the way in a circle. They do it around a stadium.
Oh my gosh.
It's that big.
Yeah.
In her book, she says, have you ever done a circle for 100 people? Try. Have you ever done a circle for 1,000 people? Try. Have you ever done a circle for 5,000 people? Try. I had her on my show last year. She's terrific. And so there's a lot of us out there trying to do high visibility teaching on things. I'm over on the other network, KCOR, and I do a program every Tuesday afternoon. We're heard all across the country on the internet, and we're heard in 60 countries, much like you guys are. Okay, so we're reaching out. We get very interesting audience, and there are people who are very seriously interested, and we've got the numbers that show that somebody's listening to this. Yeah, lots of people are coming out about it. There's a lot of people just don't want to be in the closet about it. Why? Life is too short to be in the closet about something you feel really good about and it fulfills your life, so.
Well, I mean, is it fair to say that most people just judge you by your character, and now more than ever? Because I feel that there might be a loud minority, but I think it's a minority that is opposed to acceptance, especially religiously speaking. Mm-hmm. You have someone who is Jewish or atheist running for presidential office, and it doesn't seem to be bothering people. It's not a topic of discussion.
Not like it was in 1960 when Kennedy was running. Everybody was afraid the Pope was going to run the country.
Because he was a Catholic. Right. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Okay, so we only have a few minutes. I have to ask you, because you mentioned it, and the 9th episode of the Skywalker saga is coming up in December. Are you a Star Wars fan, and what do you hope to see in this next episode?
I try. Part of my training is I try not to set expectations. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, that's very Jedi of you, sure.
Yeah, I won't be disappointed, and I'll be nothing but whatever they give me, I will be content to have.
Okay.
That's kind of how I approach it. Now, for the people who want to know about that thing with incantations, okay? Yeah. Remember I said real magical practitioners are doing it with some form of visualization, whether they're putting some herbs in a jar and burying it in the backyard with a message in there with somebody's name on it or something like that. There's a certain visualization that goes with that. There's other kinds of visualizations you do in deep meditation, things like this. If it was about incantations, there's about 700 people I've yelled at in traffic that their cars should have melted down on the pavement, if it was about incantations. Okay. So, I make sure people understand that. And do witches do bad things? There's people out there who try to be a little bit of a vigilante about somebody who's being nasty in the neighborhood or something like this. But most witches I've known are very, very ethical people. Mm-hmm. And I teach people the best and biggest spell you could possibly perform is one of ultimate generosity to all living things everywhere, every when. Because we know that when we cast something out in magic, good or bad, there's a blowback. If you send it bad, something bad's going to come back to you. Send something good's going to come back to you. So if you do this great raising of power for everybody but yourself, you benefit on the blowback.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And what's the name of your program? It's Cosmic Questions, right?
Cosmic Questions over on KCOR on Tuesdays from 2 to 3 on Eastern Time.
All right, Cheryl,
there's a ton of MP3s over there. People want to listen to them.
Okay, great. So everyone go check that out. Cheryl, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program, and I look forward to future conversations with you as well.
Please, anytime.
All right. Thank you so much, Cheryl. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. Next week, because we didn't get, again, to spend time with Carole Carle and talk about the Fox Sisters story, Carole and I will be talking about that for the first hour next week. So tune in, 8 p.m. EST on KGRA, your official contact for the best in alternative talk radio. You can go to kgrradio.com/paranormalnow for shows or paranormal.net. And on social media, you can find me on @paranormalnow on Instagram. All right. Stay tuned now for Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, and special thanks to KGRA producer Race Hobbs. Until next time, live in the mystery.